Millions of people around the world drink coffee every day. If you're one of those people, have you ever wondered what drinking coffee does to your skin? Can drinking coffee delay the appearance of wrinkles and the skin aging process? Or maybe it's the opposite, it actually speeds them up, for example by reducing collagen production. In this video, I'll explain in an easy-to-understand way how coffee affects wrinkles, your skin, and collagen. What kind of coffee should you drink and which should you avoid? How much actually makes a real difference, and why instant coffee might be better for you than coffee from an espresso machine. My name is Monika Wijwa and I am an aesthetic medicine doctor from Krakow. I'm making this video because there are many videos discussing whether coffee is healthy, but it's hard to find one that talks about what drinking coffee does to your facial skin, wrinkles, and visible aging. I found a lot of interesting studies that will finally answer the question of whether coffee slows down or speeds up aging. But before I get into that, we need to talk about what's in the coffee you drink every day. The two most important ingredients in coffee. If you ask a 10-year-old what coffee contains, they'll easily tell you that it has caffeine. Everyone knows that caffeine has a stimulating effect, meaning it stimulates the nervous system. However, that's not all that coffee does in the body. Surely some of you know that besides its stimulating effect, coffee also has antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, meaning that overall it's good for your health. But does that immediately mean that coffee somehow contributes to skin aging? In 2024, a very interesting and large study was published that examined whether the consumption of various types of fluids, including coffee, could contribute to slower aging. What did they find out? After examining over 16,000 Europeans in this regard, it was determined that higher coffee consumption is significantly associated with a lower risk of facial skin aging. But what exactly makes coffee capable of slowing down skin aging? Two important components are responsible for this. First, polyphenols. Polyphenols are antioxidants, which means they are compounds that have an anti-inflammatory effect on the body, slowing down, for example, the effects of photoaging from the sun, or reducing microinflammations in the body. Here's an interesting fact for you. According to research, coffee is the largest source of antioxidants that we consume in our diet. If you're worried that coffee is your only source of antioxidants, it's worth looking into this topic because antioxidants are extremely important for your health and skin. I've recorded a separate video about antioxidants, so make sure to save it for later. Okay, so we've established that coffee contains polyphenols and antioxidants, and thanks to that, drinking coffee helps us age more slowly. However, you should know that polyphenols aren't everything, and coffee has one more very important ingredient that affects aging. I'm talking about caffeine. Caffeine is a very interesting and often overlooked ingredient when we talk about the effects of coffee on the skin. We associate it with stimulating the body, but besides that, caffeine has other positive effects. First and foremost, caffeine supports the skin's microcirculation. It is a valuable ingredient in cosmetics, especially in eye creams, to brighten dark circles under the eyes. Caffeine really works. Speaking of good ingredients in cosmetics, you should know that I wrote a great book called Understanding Cosmetics, in which I gathered a ton of knowledge about how to choose the right cosmetics for yourself to achieve the best possible results. In the book, you'll find 140 recommendations for specific cosmetics with links, as well as very important tips on how to take care of your appearance wisely. I'm sure that this investment in your appearance will pay off many times over. And now let's get back to coffee. Now we need to answer a very important question. What kind of coffee should we actually drink to increase our chances of getting these beneficial effects? Which coffee is the best? I found an interview with a doctor from India who published research on the effects of coffee on aging. He answered the question of which specific type of coffee provides the most benefits for the skin. The conclusions are very precise. First of all, it's better to drink Arabica coffee rather than Robusta, because it contains more polyphenols. Fortunately, Arabica is much more popular in Poland, so that's already taken care of. Phew. Secondly, coffee that is roasted darker, dark roast is a better choice than lighter roasted coffee because it contains more N-methylpyridinium, which has strong antioxidant properties. This compound appears precisely during the roasting of coffee beans. Thirdly, we drink coffee without sugar because sugar ages us. If you want to know how and why sugar accelerates skin aging, check out this video later. However, that's not all. Dr. Mahajan also recommends organic coffee, which contains fewer pesticides than regular coffee. The immediate question that comes to mind is, what would Dr. Mahajan think about Polish instant coffee? Probably that it's lacking those beneficial substances, right? And here's a second interesting fact for you, before you throw your instant coffee in the trash. It turns out that, according to other studies, instant coffee actually contains more polyphenols than traditionally brewed coffee. So that cheap and popular coffee from the supermarket might actually have greater antioxidant properties than a 30 zloty cold brew from a specialty coffee shop. But be careful. If you drink a craft oat milk latte, you definitely don't need to turn your life upside down and change your preferences just because some doctor from India said so. In the interview, he also said that these individual variables are not crucial for benefiting from the positive properties of coffee, especially since there is something that matters much more when it comes to whether coffee helps, has no effect, or can even be harmful. It's about the amount of coffee consumed, meaning how much coffee to drink to get all these benefits without harming yourself. How much coffee should you drink per day? We need to determine how much coffee we can and should drink daily to age more slowly and be healthier, but also not to worsen our health or well-being. And here the first problem immediately arises. The point is that not all coffee is created equal. I have a simple example for you. There are 5 people working in my office in total. Each of us drinks coffee a little differently, which also affects the actual amount of coffee in the coffee. The record holder is my husband Dominic, who drinks his coffee so strong that if I accidentally drank his coffee, I probably wouldn't sleep for 3 days. So, how much coffee should we drink to be safe and to benefit our skin? Dr. Mahajan says that we should use common sense, which according to him means drinking between 3 and 5 cups a day. 3 to 5 cups is also the standard that was considered in the studies on the positive effects of coffee on the skin, which I showed you. However, to determine the right amount for yourself, you should consider not only the beneficial effects on the skin, but also your own preferences. That means if you feel good after 1 coffee, don't drink 5, just to avoid wrinkles. But I won't leave you with just this general information because it can actually be calculated. First of all, we need to pay attention to the amount of caffeine we consume, so we don't overdo it and end up overdosing. A single espresso made from 10 grams of beans contains about 60 milligrams of caffeine. A double espresso, which is a more popular serving size in Poland, contains about 120 milligrams of caffeine. According to EFSA, the safe daily dose of caffeine for a healthy adult is 400 milligrams, which equals 3 double espressos or 6 single espressos. However, be careful, because it's not that straightforward. Robusta coffee, which is popular in places like Indonesia, contains twice as much caffeine as Arabica. Moreover, the half-life of caffeine, that is, the time it takes to leave the body, is 3 to 7 hours. So it can happen that individual doses of caffeine overlap and intensify their effect on the body. And that's something you should watch out for. And what is the lethal dose of coffee? For a person weighing 70 kilograms, that's between 10 and 14 grams of caffeine taken at once, which corresponds, for example, to 80 to 100 cups of espresso drunk in a short period of time. However, symptoms of poisoning, such as anxiety, tremors, arrhythmia, insomnia, and vomiting, can appear much earlier, even at around 500 milligrams taken at once in sensitive individuals. So, it's wise to approach the amount of coffee you drink with moderation. If you're now thinking that coffee is always good for your skin in every situation, as long as you don't overdose, unfortunately that's not true. There are certain pitfalls of drinking coffee that I need to point out to you if you want to take wise care of your skin. And now I'll talk about them. The first coffee pitfall, which you've surely heard about, is that coffee dehydrates you. And to prove just how common this belief is, I have to tell you a story from my office, something that literally happens to me every other day. If you've ever watched my videos before, you probably know that I take pre-treatment consultations in my office very seriously. Among other things, I ask my patients about their daily water intake because hydration is very important for healthy skin. And do you know what I hear very often? Something like, "Doctor, I'm ashamed to admit it, but until the afternoon, I only drink a few coffees and nothing else." I've heard this in my office hundreds of times, and when I hear such words from patients, you can always sense a tone of guilt in their voice toward themselves. What's worse, this guilt is completely unnecessary. That's why I'm going to explain this once and for all. Coffee does not dehydrate you. If anything, it's not the coffee but the caffeine that can have a diuretic effect, but only when you consume more than 500 milligrams. And that means if you stick to the safe limits we've already discussed, you don't have to worry about getting dehydrated from coffee. So now we know that coffee doesn't dehydrate you. And I have an interesting fact for you here. Already back in 2014, a study showed that drinking coffee in normal amounts hydrates you just as well as the same amount of water. So if you've ever felt guilty for reaching for coffee in the morning instead of water, there's no need. Every morning you can enjoy your favorite drink and hydrate your body at the same time. But be careful. Seriously though, there are a few coffee drinking pitfalls that really can worsen the condition of your skin. Here they are. The first pitfall to watch out for is that coffee can negatively affect your sleep quality. So if you drink coffee 1, 2, or even 3 hours before bed, your sleep quality will get worse. That's because the half-life, the time it takes for coffee to leave your system, can be as long as 7 hours. And no antioxidant will help you if your sleep quality is poor. That's why you should avoid drinking coffee 6 to 7 hours before bedtime. The second trap, when coffee won't help but will actually harm you, is sugar. I already mentioned this in the first part of the video. Sugar is harmful because it damages the proteins in your skin, and collagen, the building block of your skin, is a protein. That's why drinking coffee with sugar is definitely not a good idea if you're looking for anti-aging effects for your skin. The third trap is decaffeinated coffee. Studies that measured the amount of antioxidants in various types of coffee brews have found that decaffeinated coffee has the fewest antioxidants of all types of coffee. So drinking decaffeinated coffee won't necessarily be as beneficial as drinking coffee with caffeine. Trap number 4. Individual tolerance to caffeine varies greatly. Some people feel great after 2 espressos, while others experience heart palpitations after just 1 weak coffee. That's why you need to find the optimal amount for yourself based on how you feel. In other words, if coffee doesn't agree with you, you definitely shouldn't force yourself to drink it just because it contains antioxidants. I'll go even further. Your main sources of antioxidants shouldn't come from coffee. There are other sources where these beneficial compounds can and should come from, such as cosmetics, supplements, or your diet. That's why I recorded a special video where I talk about where to get antioxidants and which ones have the strongest effect on our bodies. In that video, I discuss specific supplements, cosmetics, and dietary ingredients, and I also explain exactly what antioxidants do in the body. The thumbnail for that video is now showing on the screen, so click and keep watching to learn more about smart skincare. I also have a big favor to ask. If you found this video interesting, please leave me a comment below for better reach. That way YouTube will show it to more people. Thank you for that and for watching my videos. See you in the next one. Kisses. Bye.